Welcome to The Future State, the show where we take important topics from different industries, dissect them, and look at where they're heading in the future.
Nick, we're going to do a two-way podcast today. We're going to do a quick wrap-up of 2021, and then we're going to do a future state of 2022. Sound good to you?
Sounds good. It's been a big year, and lots of exciting stuff coming next year. So, yeah, it will be a good episode, good way to round off the year.
So usually the wrap-ups are like for vanity. Everyone's used to the Spotify way of doing it, or, you know, that's the prime example, the canonical example people go to. There's a couple actually I'll call out that were really good, just so people can go and check them out. Deezer's one of the, like an equivalent, but they've got a really good in-app version of a wrap-up, so people can check something like that out. Or if you're a Deezer user, let us know. Their podcast section is quite good. And then Reddit rolled one out this year. If you're a Redditor, you've probably checked it out and realised how much time you invest into a platform like Reddit. So 2021, shall I give people an example of a rundown of the podcasts that did really well and what were most popular and stuff like that? Do you reckon that'll work?
100%. Yeah. I'm super interested to know from a personal perspective.
So Nick's the guy who rolls up and does the podcast when we book in a time, and I'm the guy in the background that looks at the data and does the recording and editing. So Nick's going to be as good as the audience here. So Nick, have a guess, which one was the most popular podcast?
Oof. Oh, it's a tough question. UK or worldwide?
Worldwide. Most popular from listens perspective.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he hasn't appeared on our podcast, so it's difficult for me to predict, but yeah, it is.
Oh, our podcast. So, from our podcast. Okay, sorry, I totally missed that.
Joe Rogan in total is the most popular podcast in the world, yeah.
Oh, well, I got that right, which was, so technically right answer. I'd say out of our podcasts, NFTs.
Spot on.
It was a good one.
It was, and I think Alex actually added quite a lot of added a lot of value from not only a NFT perspective, but gave the two sides of what's happening now, where it's going, and the good, the bad, and the ugly side of NFTs. So it was definitely a good episode to listen to. I think people will listen back to it probably midway through next year and realise how some brands have rushed to it and done it wrong, and some brands will do it right, and how artists have done such a good job in using it. It's a big buzz in music at the moment, so it might be worth revisiting in a couple of months' time. What do you think the most popular pitch episode of the year was?
It's a tough one.
I'll give you a hint, it's one of mine.
It's hard to choose. Well, there was me thinking it was one of mine, so... yeah, that's blown me out of the water there. Is it your food truck? Not food truck. Go on, what were you going to say?
It should have been the coffee one, because that was quite, that I think, to be honest, that
the coffee truck. Sorry.
Coffee on Wheels, or what, I can't remember the name we actually called it. I could have a look. It was actually the email client episode.
Oh, the email, yeah. I mean, that's technically probably the stronger idea.
I think it's the most tangible,
more
right?
Needed. Yeah. It was a good one, and certainly, like, every time I use email, I have to say ongoing frustration. So it's one of those, isn't it? It's like nothing's going to change until something like this comes along, and none of the other email clients that I'm using, like Superhuman or whatever, like do it in a way that, you know, actually makes the impact, makes the difference, and changes the way that email is. So yeah, certainly a good idea, and I'm sure it got the audience thinking as well, because everyone's frustrated with email, so it's like it's a massive problem.
Just remind me, you inbox 0 or you like 1 million unread?
No, I'm in inbox 25,000 unread.
Yeah,
I've got so many email accounts, so it's kind of skewed.
But do you have obviously a work one? Do you have a Gmail or whatever that you just everything goes into it?
Yeah, I've got Hotmail is the legacy and then just other ones you've added along the way, whether it's consultancy or work emails, things that you still keep going. Also, just I like to keep an eye on all the kind of generic channels we have at work for inbound inquiries, feedback, and other things. So they're all on my phone and contributing to a very large number.
I've got a tip for everyone, just randomly. It's a little bit of work, but if you split out your email accounts, so don't just rely on Apple Mail, split it out. So like I use different email clients for different accounts. So when I have different customers or clients that have their own emails, then I'll just add another client. So for instance, I'll use Apple Mail for my Gmail. I'll use Spark, which is a really good tool for my personal email. And then I'll use Outlook for another one. And then just so you don't have any fear of sending the wrong emails, and you don't actually have to worry about having huge amounts of notifications in one inbox, because I actually think that it does cause numerous amounts of stress and anxiety for people. So if you want a quick tip, that's something that works for me and has worked for many of my consultancy clients that do it.
It's a good tip, and it's that kind of adoption of apps, right? You're going into use different apps, and it's where are your go-tos, and I think you've only got a certain amount of capacity on your natural selection of apps. Generally it revolves around your whatever social media apps, your go-tos, maybe some news or sports, and then obviously the ones that are important for work. Email certainly being the central one, or if you're into LinkedIn, you might go there, and then it'll be the next level down is your utilities. As and when you need them, you're in there. Banking being the classic kind of example. And that's the only bit I struggle with on that. I understand the approach, and I think it's a good one, but it's that level of adoption, remembering to go there, using it enough that it becomes automatic. That's always the kind of barrier for me, but I think splitting up your emails is a good idea. And actually, it's one thing that Mail on Apple doesn't do well. It just, obviously, it splits the inboxes within the email client, but it doesn't really help you digest or prioritize what's important, what's not, and it actually can become overwhelming if you read too much into those numbers, which I've desensitized myself to doing, because if I didn't, I'd be in a constant state of anxiety and fear of opening inboxes to see what's in there.
Best people that I've ever worked with, or the really senior people or really junior people, is what they're really good at is email and knowing how to deal with it. So Eric Schmidt, who used to be the Google chairman and CEO, says you should always get back immediately to people, like within 10 minutes, and like cut sort of responses. One of the best COOs I ever worked with, her name was Kelly. She knew how to manage her inboxes, and it respected people's time as well. So it's really important. The tool chat is a good segue. Do you know what your tool or app of 2021 is?
Yeah, it's like predictably boring. But the thing I've relied on most this year, which I didn't in years gone by, it was there, but I didn't really use it as much, as actually the podcast app. And it's, like I said, it's quite predictable because we're kind of podcasting now, so it plays into that. But actually, as something that I use now on a daily, if not every other day basis, it's become incredibly valuable, I think, as a resource, as a way of learning around those kind of dead times of my day, whether it's around commutes or travel, or maybe it's I go out for a walk if I'm working from home, walk around the block, hit a podcast on, and actually I need that space away from the computer, away from the house, away from the desk, to absorb the information. And certainly for me, if we go back to the start of the year when we were still in lockdown, or things were a lot more restricted, it was really, really interesting that this content could keep being produced very easily because of the wonder of things like Riverside FM, which we use, or Zoom, or whichever tool for podcasts people are using, but also obviously super easy to deliver the content to an audience. So for me, I think it's a predictable one, but it's actually, this has been basically my year of podcasts where I've dipped in and out previously. It's never become top 10, top 5. It's never become a go-to, but actually, yeah, over the past year, it's been the one that's really stuck. And obviously, we started the podcast a few months ago now, and that has obviously played into this as well. But at the same time, I think just really giving it the chance to make an impact and kind of finding the podcasts that I enjoy on the topics I enjoy that I feel give me that either a knowledge boost or entertainment value. Certainly it's been a big one this year for me, and a real shift, actually, a big shift. What about you?
I've got a couple. So for the podcast, actually, just Descript is what we use. So what I use to edit, and you can do it by words. So like rather than having to edit audio files, you can edit it by words and phrases, and you can move it around, which is really good. It's not actually that expensive. And then there's a comms tool that I recommend quite a lot, which is around.co. It's really under the radar, but essentially you can use it externally, but it's more of like an internal tool, and it's really good for meetings. So it's like a video meeting. You can do audio on it if you want to do audio only, but it sends, if you're good and you take notes, it will send it through to every attendee, and it's really good to sort of break down the barrier, and it's got this really good echo canceller. So if you're in the same room, if you're doing a hybrid meeting and 2 or 3 of you in one room and other people are external, you don't have that really annoying feedback. So it manages to remove it. So it's free at the moment. So I'd definitely get looking at that if you're sick and tired of Zoom or Teams or one of the other many things that we had to download during the move to hybrid work. Just a quick question for you, Nick. Do you use you're an Apple fanboy, so do you use the default podcast tool app, or do you use a third-party one?
I use the default, just because my library's built in that default, and to move away I'd have to go through my library, kind of redo it. It probably needs a clean up, to be honest, because some you just follow and don't end up engaging with. So but everything's in there. You build that asset value, and it's becomes tough to move away.
And what's your product of 2021? Have you got a product that everyone should check out?
Yeah, and it's something that I've known about for a few years, but never really been a kind of user of. But I started to use it for different reasons this year, and that was Canva. So I really, really like Canva. I think it's, if you're doing presentations, it's really, really good. Very versatile in what it can do. I think aesthetically, the templates, the designs are nice. Don't get me wrong, there's some areas of it where it loses out to something like, PowerPoint or Google Slides, from probably more of a business perspective. But I think in terms of the simplicity of use, the range of tools inside of it, and graphical elements and fonts and everything else that you can use. If you're doing stuff on the personal side, the templates are great. I mocked something up for it was my mother's 75th birthday, and I did some kind of like Photoshoppy. We're going to go on a trip to Scotland, so I photoshopped her face into William Wallace and Jimmy Cranston and others as a bit of a joke, which went down super well. So it was, everyone found it really funny. I did a lot of it in Canva in terms of the final design. Basically, I designed her a card on Canva and had that printed out, by a nice local printer. And then kind of gave that to her, and it was something that she could keep, something quite funny. And Canva was just so easy to use, and I just feel like it can take sort of bog standard presentations up to a different level. And I think if you're a kind of freelancer without a style guide, without a branded templated deck that you roll out as part of kind of company collateral, I think is a really good way to establish a kind of brand for yourself, and a way of delivering something that looks high quality, without writing something blank in PowerPoint or slides and then trying to jazz it up. It's almost write the content separately, absolutely fine, and then you can just copy and paste it into Canva and it'll put it in a deck template that will look super professional, very polished, great design. And I think that that works really well. There was another service that I used this year actually that is a great tool, I think, for kind of, again, depending on what you need it for. But if you want kind of quick and dirty jobs, like Fiverr is still, like, nothing obviously costs $5, but it's still a really good resource. And again, in some kind of personal stuff I was doing, I used Fiverr and had some bits and pieces designed for the football team that I coach and different things. And it was really, really, again, just great service. You can find, trusted reviews in terms of, you've got a volume of reviews, star ratings, so it's quite easy to find people, and those seem genuine. And then the quality of work is kind of super easy, very quick turnaround. The output was of a really good quality. I think, you've got to be strong in your brief and know what you want, and always put some examples forward that are reflective of what you're looking for. But also using that, really, again, I've known it's there, but I haven't really used it, and then I have used it in the last half of the year, and it's been really, really good experience. And again, I think if you combine Fiverr and Canva to make, say you're a consultant and you want a nice kind of consultancy brand, you could do it quite easy between the two of those and have something that's quite outwardly facing, very professional looking. And not that I necessarily need that for what I'm doing, but it's, I'd say it's a good tip for anybody that is looking to kind of polish up their game in 2022 and come across as, a lot more professional, but great design and everything else with kind of minimal cost.
Yeah, I echo both. I really like, we've done some stuff with for the pod on Canva. I really like it. I actually still use Keynote on Apple versus the others, but there's a couple of little hack for people if you like the look of a presentation on Canva, but you prefer using PowerPoint or Keynote. If you export it and then just tweak it in your preferred one, that's quite a good way to tweak the presentations. If you want, if you're looking to present something, it's quite easy just to export, so it'd be well worth it, especially if you're not the person who's like the aesthetics person of a PowerPoint presentation. There's another app called Trello, which is Trello but with a C basically, and it's an equivalent. It's quite good. It's really good for like social posts and stuff like that, so it's well worth checking that out. Upwork's also a good version of Fiverr if you wanted something that's probably a little bit more expensive, but it also works really well. I think they're both listed companies, so you can't really go wrong with something like that anymore. I know it used to get a bit of a bad rep, but it's not quite like a Mechanical Turk like they were probably 5 years ago. My products of 21 is actually, I'm going to go for a physical product first, which is the iPad Pro, the 2021 version. I use it religiously to replace my laptop almost exclusively because of the annoying fan I have in one of my in a Mac that's only a couple of years old. It's what, I spend a lot of my time in, as it's still seen as a mobile device in inverted commas. It's a little bit more tricky when you want to have more specific, extensions, but it's well worth it. And one thing that I love the most around as a product person is how well people thought about integrating it into work life. Should we dive into the future state of 2022, Nick? I think that's what people probably want to hear most out of us.
Yeah, let's do it. You go first, and I'll clean up the crumbs that you leave behind.
So I think there's going to be consolidation. I think it's a no-brainer every year, but I think it's going to happen in a lot of different spaces. So I think neobanks, the challenger banks, I think they're all going to end up having to wrap up or consolidate, and it'll be dog eat dog. But as I've said in a couple of different posts on my blog on focus.business, I put some links in the show notes. It's how you're positioned in consolidation that matters, and how you understand what that means for you and your staff. Food delivery, we're already starting seeing it, but the rapid delivery apps, inside London. If you're outside London, unfortunately, you probably haven't experienced too many of them. But Wheezy sold to Get Here, which is the largest probably one from a market share perspective. I think we're going to see more and more consolidation in that space. But what that will mean is in other cities and smaller towns across, Europe and US and Canada, you're going to see probably a better sort of style service, and supermarkets, etc., stepping up for this. Social media apps, I think social media is coming to the end of 2.0, and 3.0 is going to sort of take over, and we're already seeing it. You can't really get anyone clicking on any of the links. It's really difficult, and I think what we're going to see is this consolidation of how they all work, and everyone copies each other's features really quickly, so we'll see that happen. And I think podcasts and podcast apps are going to either consolidate together or they'll go under networks. Networks typically don't work for podcasters because they lose a lot of the revenue from the sponsorship and ads. But I think for people that do it for a hobby, it might not be something, but if you're doing it to try and be semi-professional, professional, then there's going to be a lot of consolidation and exclusivity that's going to happen again, because it's clearly working for Spotify. I think there's going to be a slight audio decline. As Nick said, like a lot of us have started to listen to more and more podcasts, but actually there's more and more time wasted in things that we don't want to invest time in anymore. So like Clubhouse struggled after the first series of lockdowns and quarantines if you're in the US. I think other companies have already beaten it up. Twitter's probably killed it with Spaces, and we'll see that more and more. But I would say that audio is going to be a format that we're going to get more used to. And I think we're going to be sending more audio notes and having more audio first meetings, providing obviously you don't have people that are hard of hearing and do need video. But I think audio is going to be something that it won't be basically going back to the old school phone, but it will be audio based online, and there'll probably be a lot of CC, so a lot of captions that are added in automatically. What I think people need to sort of realise is, we've got music, we've got radio, we've got audio notes, we've got podcasts, and we've got audio books, and they all need a different variety of our time and our attention. So music can be in the background. It can be like 10 to 20% of our, it needs cognitive attention, our attention. Audio notes need, like 50%. Podcasts like 60%, but audio books you really need to listen. So I think we're going to have to understand the scale, and I think what will happen is consolidation within that market, and Audible and Amazon are already trying, so we'll see how Spotify do with audiobooks, etc. I think we're going to see the first super app outside of the Eastern world, and I think people are going to have to choose whether it's an Apple super app, a Facebook super app, or a Google one. Maps used to be probably the closest we had for Google. I think Facebook and Meta have been trying it for a long time. Interestingly, Meta have just rolled out the Novi wallet app into WhatsApp for a couple of countries. That instantly opens up crypto. So I think there's going to be a big shift to people trying that out. And I also think Amazon might try and build like a one-size-fits-all app that will do everything that you need it to do. So I'm not saying it's definitely going to come out and we'll all be using it in 2022, but I do think we're going to be moving much quicker and more closely to one app that reigns them all. And food wraps in nicely with it, travel does, etc., etc. I think there's going to be some new user-generated platforms, UGC, so user-generated content. So I think YouTube's kind of moved down the more production route, some more the professional route. I think we're actually going to see this become unbundled. So we're seeing this in Discord, we're seeing it in Telegram. I think we might actually see Patreon take a bit of market share for the creator economy from YouTube. But I know YouTube's a big resource for a lot of people, but it's not very good for creators. So I think it will be a shift and a move away from it. And we should be wary about how you act on platforms, just so people understand that actually how you comment and that will appear and will show up, and it's being used against you for many different ways. So just be a bit wary of user-generated content and how you reply, because we're seeing numerous different cases happening across the world. TikTok's move to TV's very smart. It's a TV app now, and I think they're going to have more longer form content, and that's going to be really important because you'll probably choose to spend a lot more time in TikTok than you used to. And I still think that iMessage and WhatsApp are still underserved from a UGC perspective. Just because you don't have 1 million people that could view it, I think people are realising that actually for iMessage, Telegram, Discord, WhatsApp, there's huge captive audiences around niches. So I think that we might see a bit of an unbundling there. Work, very quickly, I think we're going to have a third place. Is at the moment we're going in the UK, we've just been recommended to work from home. A lot of us still were most of the time. So I think Starbucks were the pioneers of the third space. But I think there's work, there's home, and then there'll be a coffee shop or places where we'll work a bit more. I think there's going to be more local offices. I think people will decide to be hybrid, and they'll have to work out the challenges. But I think hybrid's the only way forward for majority of companies. And then I think the great reconsideration versus the resignation. I think people are going to reconsider their position within businesses and what they want their job to be. But I don't think we'll see as many people actually look to resign, because there's not actually that many jobs available out there, and we're seeing it across the world. But this great resignation is overhyped, in my opinion. Most brands will go D2C, so they'll move directly to the customer because of the relationship. And I also think there's going to be brands that want to be experimental and experience based. So if you're in that space and you've got a store, or you're online only, you're going to want to create a store so it's experience only. Nick and I have talked around this numerous times, but I think this is going to ring true. And then I'm going to reduce these down actually, but I think it's going to be a boom of payless. So what I mean is Amazon, Tesco's, Sainsbury's and Co-op have all got these camera first stores that you don't actually have to pay. It's all done on an app or a QR code. I think they're going to boom, and they're going to sort of expand everywhere and really quickly. And then I think stores heavily rely on staff, and they've really struggled in COVID times to keep them, so that's going to be quite difficult. And contactless and buy now, pay later will get into this more and more. And I'm against buy now, pay later companies because of what they're doing, and essentially just new credit cards, and people haven't worked that out yet. But I really think there's going to be a bit of a revolt against it, but they're going to get into everyday life and everyday spending. So I think that's a big spot. And just lastly, I think there's going to be huge IT hacks. Like I think everyone's going to have some sort of breach or another, but it's going to be huge. Luckily for my twin brother, he has an IT support company and a cloud-based solutions company, so he's in a good spot. But I think remote work creates more strain, and hybrid work does, and a lot more security strain. There's a lot more email spam that's going to happen, and it's got a lot more sophisticated. And then I think big companies are going to have hacks on their old databases, which is going to cause numerous amounts of problems. So GoDaddy had one this year, and although it was an old database, essentially it got hacked. I think more and more people are going to experience that. It's going to have a huge detrimental impact.
Great, and I think, there was some really good ones in there. One I wanted to just mention was WeWork have changed their model to be more of a membership model, a little bit like a private members club, as it were, but you get access to the spaces across the world. It's drop in, book meeting rooms on demand, and I certainly think that's a way things are going to go. So I actually segued that into my kind of more business related future state predictions. So exactly what I just talked about there, remote working. I think there's so much opportunity for more innovation in the space. I think that's both around the practices and processes, as well as the physical locations. And I looked at a business a few years ago actually that I was asked to advise on, and that was all around utilising dead space in dead times, bars and restaurants, especially in London during the day, where they can set up co-working spaces. And there's been some smart movers, kind of more casual dining places that have already started to do this. You can pay a fee per day, like £10 a day, and then you have a minimum spend on food and drink. But they've certainly seen it as a way to fill those dead periods. And I think that there's two things that will happen. There'll be more and more opportunities and options come up in terms of where you can go. It's very, very difficult now, unless you're in London, to find good working environments. you can go and find a coffee shop, and you get the coffee shops as well that are like, oh, these people are coming in and they've, you know, bought one coffee all day and used our electricity and internet for the whole day. And they're going to move more to membership models.
Just to jump, sorry, Nick, to jump in.
Getting something back. Yeah.
But the thing is, that's the thing that gets brand equity and gets affinity. So actually, like, they don't mind from a day-to-day perspective that people don't buy 10 cups of coffee, whereas they'd much rather doing it. I've got a future state episode that we were planning to do this year, but we'll do next year on that. But yeah, I think a lot of people misunderstand and misinterpret the need to allow that behaviour to happen in their stores.
Yeah, and I think it depends if you're a small independent brand and your business model is all about who can we get through the door and how can we generate money, I think they need to look at more of an innovative ways to do it. And I think that will be, you know, things like low-level membership schemes, so they can guarantee some recurring revenue. And when you flip to the investment side, you know, if you're trying to build something that then can get investment, it's all about that predictable recurring revenue that's going to get the investors' interest. So I think that will be the basis of most models, and then upsell on top. But yeah, I totally agree for bigger brands. I actually think that's something else that will come along in this space is, you know, brands have a lot of maybe ineffective or dead retail space. How can they create co-working environments with retail mixed in? And I think that will be a kind of shop front with something in behind, or a mixture of both. But, you know, these drop-in spaces that give opportunity for kind of brand activation. You know, you just off the top of my head example, Nike open a space which is kind of half apparel and half equipment and different things, and maybe a gym, and then the other half is like co-working, and then obviously everybody's co-working in there because they can pull people in through their marketing channels, fill it up. You know, you might even buy an NFT to be a member, this exclusive kind of member club, and then there'll be different activations, product launches, things going on around that space where you have captive audience there. It looks great for social, like there's lots of people attending, lots of people spread it via social as well. So I think there's huge opportunity to kind of merge B2C and B2B, as it were, and create these more creative spaces that really inspire people to you know, work and kind of play at the same time. And that's another area where I think there's just huge opportunity, is what are the processes? How do we balance our hybrid lives? How do we get the most out of it? You know, there's some great presentations out there and some great techniques around productivity, whether it's Pomodoro technique or others. There's so much that you can do in terms of your productivity and how you can keep that at a high level. And a lot of that is around, you know, some positive distraction at moments throughout your day and the environment that you're working in. So yeah, I think that's going to be a really exciting area that we can look at. I think B2B wise as well, I think LinkedIn will continue to be a place for content creation in the B2B communities. I think that they're trying to improve, you know, constantly their range of sharing tools and what you can post there and how that can get inside of their algorithms and shared across the platform, and you get huge reach. And I think that's a really great place for people to play next year, you know, if they're looking to push their messages a little bit wider, or looking to position themselves. I think that's really, really a key thing. I think on the B2B side as well, one of the things that you touched on is people struggling to recruit. I think that, you know, there's huge opportunity to create to recruit more outside of your typical geographical area and look in wider areas because of remote working. But that also comes with its challenges. So I think we're going to see this kind of big shift this year about how you recruit remote workers on an operational side of things. You know, we've been doing it for a long time with devs, but on an operational side of things, I think there'll be some recruiters that stick their head out and they come up with a formula to kind of vet people, put in tool sets that work, link tool sets or ways of working into companies, and you look at slightly different criteria for your recruitment needs. And I think a lot more people are actually going to go freelance because they know that companies are desperate and there's money to be made there. And I think it's basically what's going to knit the two worlds together, what's going to knit the freelance world with the businesses that need to recruit these people to make sure that they can work in your way of working, and also how can you find the cultural fit, and how can you create remote cultural working fit, which I think are big challenges, but huge areas of opportunity. Flipping over to more of the kind of consumer side and brand side, I think that immersive is going to continue to grow next year. Facebook are going to pump a lot more money into the narrative of the metaverse. And although, my company, for example, has been an early mover in this space, you're going to get more people kind of bandwagon jumping and appearing to try and capitalize on this move by Facebook. And I think we'll see a lot of that next year. And I think it'll be really interesting to see what Apple do with their headset product that's going to be hopefully launched or at least announced towards the back end of Q1, start of Q2, and then we'll see when the headset, you would expect them maybe to launch it towards the end of the year, dependent on how far they are with their product development, but they like to do it, on the back of the Apple keynotes and also coming into Christmas sales periods. I think it'll be really interesting, but that price point is going to be the key thing with the new Apple headset, VR mixed reality. And I think AR will continue to really dominate in the short term and be the bridge to bridge people between, digital realities and physical realities, because we all have devices. We can all use AR. I think on the back of that, we're going to see, whether it's in this kind of, Web3 or whether it's in immersive spaces, I think we're going to see the emergence of a new social media platform at some point this year. A little bit like we saw Clubhouse emerge but fall away. I think there's so many case studies that you can look at in terms of getting it right now. There's so many more things that you can bring into how you build that product and how you market that product. And although I think TikTok will continue to dominate in younger generations, I think there's an opportunity there to take some market share away from Instagram in some areas, in areas that make people a little bit more positive about using the product with their own mental health. And I think there's a real opportunity for someone to get that right. All it comes with, though, is not only the right product, it's just deep marketing pockets. So it's really going to have to come from either an established player diversifying or a very well VC-backed startup that have got, the foundations of something good. And basically they have deep enough pockets to acquire audiences and bring them over to the new platform. I think on the retail side, we'll see the comeback of bricks and mortar, reasonably good pricing at the moment still to get back in bricks and mortar places and spaces. And I think people will look at this with fresh eyes and think about how they design their retail stores to have that really high experiential element. And I think there'll be these more experience-rich activations within bricks and mortar or within high footfall concentration areas such as, Westfield or the West End in London or, Trafford centres or places like this across the country. You're going to get a lot more interesting activations, not just someone trying to come at you with a clipboard trying to sell you the Sky TV you've probably already got. It will be things that are more experiential, more interesting, and it will be things that really captivate audiences and get them introduced to new products in a more exciting and innovative way. I think we're going to see sustainability on the rise again and that narrative continue, and I think more sustainable brands will emerge. And what will be interesting to see if we start to see some actual backlash against, fast fashion brands. And people starting to invest in more quality. Obviously, certain age groups and disposable income levels are more accessible for sustainable brands. But it'll be really interesting to see what else supports sustainability messages across different sectors and across different brands. And I think if there is a concerted effort from multiple brands to support the messaging and move and it not just be a PR exercise, I think what you're going to get is more independent organisations popping up that push these messages in their sectors and holding businesses in their sectors to account. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I think next year is a huge year of opportunity. We're in a period of opportunity now with what's happened with COVID. And I think now the dust is starting to settle. We're starting to establish a bit more of a pattern. I think people have a bit more data to build opportunities from the back of. And I think local is going to get big again. More quality coming into local areas and more things like staycations. I think there's huge opportunity in the staycation sector for people not wanting or able to travel, or people who don't want the uncertainty of having to travel and maybe something crop up last minute that disrupts that. And I think, pumping more quality into the staycation sector, people looking more locally and nationally to adventure more. I think that's going to become pushed through the media and the types of programs that are being made that kind of highlight different places and experiences you can have, and I think people will go more towards that. On NFTs and crypto, I think next year is going to be another roller coaster for crypto that might start off bullish, drop off, peaks and troughs. And NFTs, I think what we're going to see is more data coming through on those NFTs that hold their values and those that don't. I think it's going to give people more of a playbook about what they want to look for when it comes to NFTs and NFT purchasing. And I think the bubble's going to burst slightly in terms of a lot of things won't hold their value and will become sort of not as tradable as people thought they would be. And people have that realization moment that they might have invested quite heavily into something and it was basically a bad investment. And I think we'll see more innovation in that sector and also more brands entering the NFT sector and maybe the crypto sector as well. It'll be very, very interesting. Just last one for me is audio. I think audio quality is going to be an area where people try to play and try to battle, and I think that's on hardware and the software side. I think OS updates to Apple and Android and others are going to put audio at the heart of a lot of things, and I think the hardware is going to get better and better as well. How can we provide the best quality hardware to go with the best quality audio software products? We're already sort of Tidal trying to play in this area, not quite get it right. And I think the time is right for an uprising of this again next year and people kind of coming more back into that sector, obviously littered with different price point wireless wearable devices for audio. But I think quality is going to be key. And I think it's going to be people really starting to look at how they can invest in audio a little bit more, both on a hardware and a software perspective. So that's me done.
That's a lot of predictions from both of us. There's a lot that you said, like audio. I didn't want to touch Web3 or NFTs or crypto because it's just too volatile. Spending so much of your time in Discord will burn anyone. I think there's a lot there. Just to wrap up, I want to thank everyone for listening this year and listening to, I think it's 17 episodes that we've done over the 3 different series. Nick and I are going to come back with some more episodes, probably a couple more pitch episodes. I've got a load in the can to run through. So thanks everyone, and just remember to rate and review because it really does help us reach bigger audiences.
Yeah, thanks for your support and enjoy your Christmas and New Year, and we look forward to welcoming you back next year. And if you've got any ideas for pods you want us to cover or you want to come on as a guest, please contact us. All the contact information will be in the show notes.